Hey everybody, this is Douglas. Thanks for tuning in to another video. It's been a while, it's been a week. I fell into my habit of procrastination and time has slipped away between now and the last video. But anyways, still haven't decided exactly the filming schedule for these little discussions of ours, but I'd like it to be a frequent thing and a mindful thing. So anyways, I'm going to stay accountable and show you that I'm aware of what I'm doing and what's going on. But anyways, the topic that I wanted to discuss today was COVID-19 and more specifically the lockdowns. So this year has been a historic year. It's still actually history in the making. I'm sure if you're watching this, I don't know when you're watching this, if it's still 2020 or sometime in the future, but I'm sure you know what COVID-19 is, or the other name it goes by is the coronavirus. But I don't specifically want to talk about the virus. I want to talk about the lockdowns that were in response to the virus. So in the United States, especially New York State, and I guess California, but New York where I live, the state was under what they call quarantine. And it was under quarantine for 3 months. So when it first started, and even up until last week, but when it first started, nobody knew how long it was going to last. And it was a tentative thing. Basically, we were going to see how things turned out and play by ear and act accordingly. And the thing I want to dwell on or ponder on is the benefit. So beyond the physical precaution or prevention of getting ill, the real benefit that I think came from the quarantine was it disrupted the status quo. So initially, as I was saying, nobody knew how long it was going to last, and we all were in the dark. Many of us were not working, and whether that meant we were laid off or on furlough, I guess, which I guess means you're still hired but not getting paid, or if you were fired or whatever. Anyways, whatever the case may be, a large portion of people were not going to work. A large portion of businesses were actually closed down. Everything that was deemed non-essential. So many of the recreational things like restaurants, like cosmetic style type things were closed. Retail were closed, and only the things that were really necessary were open. But you know all this, so that's not really the point of this video. The point is, when we were all under lockdown with limited mobility and limited places that we could go, it was a growth opportunity. It was the perfect, and we're still in it. I mean, things haven't opened up fully. But anyways, It was a growth opportunity for several reasons. Most of our distractions we didn't have access to, most of our physical distractions. We still had access to the internet and social media, and that's what many of us actually receded into to maintain or visit the familiar. But anyways, without the distractions, many of us had to sit with our own thoughts, sit with our own feelings, and that makes many people uncomfortable. Many people do not like sitting in silence because then their fears and their discomfort creep out. If you, well, you're going to come to know me. Where's the freaking? Oh, there it is. Sorry. My nose is running. This being a channel for growth and preparation, you'll know that my belief is we should aim for fearlessness. We should aim for being comfortable, being uncomfortable. So, being in lockdown for so long, you're afforded the opportunity. One second. You're afforded the opportunity to reassess your life, your beliefs. It's just a perfect opportunity to take stock of where you are. And hopefully, many of us did it. I know I didn't actively do it, but I try to. I have a belief of conscientiousness, regardless. So, it was also just a relief from being worn down in the pressures of life. It brought its own set of unique pressures, like financial, but then that was offset by assistance by the government and maybe family and whatever other organizations. But the real benefits were spiritual and mental. Of course, there were also drawbacks, like being forced to be in close proximity and seclusion if you're in like an abusive relationship, especially if you're a child. That's one of the unfortunate aspects of the lockdown. Like if you have an abusive parent or siblings or any kind of relative, if you're in some kind of situation that's already hard to cope with and now you're in it in an inescapable way. But most of us aren't in those type of situations. Most of us don't have to deal with the kind of abuse that would. One second. All right, so most of us don't have to deal with that kind of abuse that would offset the benefits of silence. So, for most of us, we don't have to deal with that, and we had the opportunity to be free of the distractions that are forced upon us. So, if you watch my other video about prejudice and racism, you might remember that I mentioned that we're all brought into this world that's already fully formed and predates us. And it's much bigger than us. There's many forces and customs that we tend to fall in line with automatically and feel that they are just what is, like work, doing a 9 to 5, and school, basically a regimented system of living. But being in the lockdown showed us that many of the things that we think must be actually aren't. Many people do not have a livable wage. Many people are toiling and still don't have their needs met. But that's not the way it has to be. The world kept going perfectly fine without any of us going to work. Many of us lose sight of the forest for the tree right before our eyes. So we think we're in this sinking boat, right? And we don't want to go down with the ship. So we're constantly scooping out water with the bucket so we can try and stay afloat. But we don't have to be in a stinking ship. We don't have to be on a ship at all, really. Like capitalism. People think capitalism is the greatest mode of operation, I guess, the society could attain to and maintain. But capitalism keeps us enslaved. There was a world before capital. Money has no intrinsic value other than the value we put on it. We take a tree or some kind of plant, we crush it up, mold it into whatever form, and dye it with inks. It's just a piece of vegetation. It has no value other than the value you put on it. If you use metals and ores, like coins, or diamonds even, same thing. That's just a more natural forming form of currency that we mold and shape. But anyways, the point of the matter is, or the point that I'm really trying to make is, the things that we think can't change, or the things that we think are necessary, can change. And the things that we think are fixed, I should say, are actually not fixed. The things that we think that are necessary aren't necessary, like money and going to work. We are born to live. We're not born to work. We're not born to toil for someone else before we die. In actuality, each of us, the purpose of our life is to find our Creator, establish our relationship, and maintain it. Aside from that, our mission is to discover, uncover, and develop ourselves. And with the distractions, many of us sideline that one mission. We sideline many missions. So, when many of us also fear the unknown. And like I said, with this lockdown, we did not know how long it would last. We did not know what the future holds. And we never do. But when we are mindlessly going with the program, we don't have to dwell on those fears of the unknown. But when that program is suspended, like it was, there's nothing keeping our fears at bay. But when we face and examine those fears, we can move past them. We can process them. This was a perfect example. It was a healthy pause. Life was moving at a much slower pace, and the environment reflected that. Cities were quieter. They were cleaner. The atmosphere was clearer. You could go outside And without all of the hustle and bustle of us running and going nowhere at all, without all the self-imposed BS, things started to, go back to a more natural state. Humans are so out of sync with nature, and that's on an individual level. That's not talking about the planet like global warming or animals going extinct or deforestation. That's on your own biological individual level. People are so unhealthy and sick, especially in the developed world. In first world countries like the United States of America, Canada to a lesser degree, England, all the countries, to varying degrees, are out of sync with nature. We're more in tune with industry. Most of us don't know how to survive off the land. Most of us could not survive off of the grid if we are thrown in there right now. We don't know what foods to eat. We don't know how to purify water or build shelter. And those are all physical things. But we're more than just physical creatures. Most of us don't maintain our emotional health, our mental health, our spiritual health. Most of us would rather distract ourselves with pleasures and entertainment, and distractions just as a broad enough term. You can actually fill in the blanks for yourself. But most of us neglect our needs on a physical standpoint, and even more so on an invisible, intangible standpoint. We go with the status quo, and that actually does not serve our benefit. So, the lockdowns showed us that it's not necessary to go to work. And, alright, so Rome was not built in a day, as the expression goes. And we're not gonna transform overnight. Like these riots and the people against the government and the police, people are asking, what purpose does that serve? And what's going to be accomplished? What's going to be accomplished is change. And if you have actively tried to improve and change, the more you actually do this on a regular basis, you see that there is a rhythm. There is a process that does not happen overnight. Most things do not happen that rapidly. Whether you're building muscle, losing fat, building a car, building a house, there are steps and stages and markers of progression, but they are there. In the same way, these riots, these looting, the police response, the government response, the conspiracy theories, the celebrity response, none of it is a solution, but they are all steps toward the solution. They are all stages of our collective growth. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the lockdown. People were so quick to want to go back to what they were familiar with. They want to go back to the surface level things. They want to get their hair cut. They want to go outside. They want to go to restaurants. They want to do what they want to do. They want to shop. But this made us go home, made us slow down, and we had an opportunity to think, to relax, decompress, meditate. Hopefully some of us took that opportunity and actively did those things. But even if you didn't do those things where you actively meditated each day, or you actively exercised, or you actively consumed things for your mind and your body that will benefit you, even if you didn't do any of those things, just the break alone is beneficial. The slow pace is beneficial. It teaches us patience. Many of us don't have patience. We feel we need to get, instant gratification. We need to be satisfied immediately. And that's an immature, unhealthy mentality. And ultimately, it contributes to your anxiety. It contributes to your dependence on feeling in control. The fact of the matter is, none of us are in control. You don't know when you're even going to die. You don't know how you're going to die. And if you actually think about it, there's so little things that you're actually in control of. Even yourself. Man, these kids are loud. But anyways, but you do have an influence. It's like driving a car. You think you're in control until you hit a patch of ice. Or you hit a puddle. But you are never in control of a vehicle. So hydroplaning makes you realize that you're not in control. You're just influencing the path of the vehicle. One second. Anyway, so sorry, had to pause it again, but life is meant to be lived, and to do that to the fullest and to the best degree possible, you have to be in the moment and you have to be mindful. You need to question things. So many things we take for granted, and you don't realize, unless you reflect, how many beliefs and just programs you adopt and internalize. You want to set your own course. You want to live the life that you decided to live, not that you just happen to live and were adrift in the stream of thought and the torrent of thought, like birthday parties, holidays, all these things. Every aspect of our life you should question. Where did you get this belief? Why do you believe what you believe? How do you want to proceed? Now you might think it's not that serious, but everything is that serious. Everything requires your active thought and mental energy, and you need to be in a regular program of examining and questioning and reassessing and redefining. And this forced lockdown was a golden opportunity, and hopefully things never go back to the way they were beforehand, and we all have a little bit more autonomy and conscientiousness. Because if you didn't know before, I'm going to tell you now, even as good or comfortable as you were beforehand, things could always be better. Think about that. Actively think about it. What would you like the world to be like? What would you like to be for yourself? You can be that. The world can be that. So we can't control the world as individuals, but we could contribute to the dream world that you have in your mind. we've all heard the cliche, I guess, at this point saying, be the change you want to see. So, how do we do that in a practical way? By being conscientious. Now, I'm somebody who consumes a lot of social media. I'm on it hours a day. And I am somebody who feeds into distraction. So, you might think I'm a hypocrite, but the point or the difference is being self-aware. Everything that I consume, well, not everything, but the things I consume, I look at them as my teachers. I know I am what I eat. So if I eat bad, I become bad, and it becomes a part of me. And I can actively look for lessons in things, or I can passively look for lessons. So you don't know, or you may not know, that regardless of if you are thinking about something or not, it has an impact and an influence over you. It has an impact and influence over your thoughts and your perceptions. So if you're not actively engaged with material, it's going to have an effect on you without you knowing. So I like to try and pay attention to people, to events, to the world, animals, etc. And one thing I liked about Mary, Jesus' mother, is when something would happen, the Bible says she would take note. So she would see something and she would store it away in her mind. She didn't just passively view and then forget. She looked for the significance of things, even things that might not seem significant. Our path is not set. My father died a few months ago in February, and although it wasn't his time per se, for many years I've known and he knew, and anybody I talked to, I would tell them that he was going to die, and he knew. So he couldn't have died in ignorance, really, not with me around, because I'd tell him, because he was an unhealthy individual. He didn't have to die in February. He didn't have to die in the hospital. But he chose to. You and I are choosing our future. And whether you know or not, you are either setting yourself up for a harder or an easier time in the future. So if you really want to help yourself out, you should set aside tools for yourself to use. Nobody knows what's coming tomorrow. So you want to be as healthy as possible. Do a little bit of exercise. Do a little bit, and that's physical and mental. Pay attention to the things happening. You don't want to be blindsided by anything, whether it's a physical attack, a physical set of circumstances, emotional or mental attack. You want to be able to see it coming, and when it does come, you want to be prepared. You don't want to be both blindsided and unprepared, do you? So, set yourself up for success to the best of your degree possible. That doesn't mean you have to be ultra diligent and regimented and disciplined. It just means you have to be conscientious, and the more you are conscientious and the more you take responsibility for your decisions and actions, the stronger and more skillful and prepared you will be.